That's kicking. That's her. Arriving late.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the University of Lapland and the Snow Show organization, I would kindly want to welcome you all to this Snow Show Symposium. I'm sorry to say we are a little bit late, but that's not that dramatic. I hope we have time until 1 p.m. The idea of the whole day is to be as spontaneous, as creative, as communicative as possible. Take it easy, so to speak. And just for the beginning, I would like to say a couple of words of the agenda of today, and then give the mic to Chief Curator Lance Fung. Lance Fung will start the symposium with a short introductory words and remarks, after which Professor Timo Jokela will give a short presentation of the Snow Show Art Education Project, after which I will kindly ask all the artists and architects involved here on the stage to introduce themselves briefly, and then to give a kind of short summary, summa summarum, how does it feel right now after the long process. They've all gone a big, long way, interesting way until today, and we are just before the opening day, the great day, the D-Day, so to speak, and the idea would first of all to hear how the artists and architects feel, what's their self-reflective position, so to say, after which we kindly ask you, the audience, to be as active as possible. Let's build today's symposium more as a dialogue than a monologue or anything like that. With these words, most welcome, and I'll give the mic to Lance Fung, the Chief Curator of the Snow Show Project. Please, Lance.
Smashing a bottle of champagne against the stage to open up the symposium. Basically, as you know, and I think many of you have read and heard about the exhibition here locally, and those who are in from abroad have already heard me speak many, many times. That's our youngest participant. No, it's great. There he goes, he's hungry. But the show is about collaboration. And what's been happening over the past few years here and abroad has been an incredible group of artists and architects who have worked together to design projects which have been realized here in Rovaniemi and in Kemi. Many of the artists and architects are behind me right now. Others have been here for the opening, but of course needed to return to continue with their other works and projects going on all around the world. I'm not sitting up here, I'm not moderating, because the story's not about me or even the show. It really is about these incredible artists and architects. I really owe so much thanks and gratitude for their generous talent, flexibility, risk-taking, because to create something and not have a hands-on experience, whether you're an artist or an architect, is just blind faith. And they had the faith and interest in the project. I assume they saw it as a challenge and a unique opportunity, but at the same moment, right up until the day that they saw it for the first time and up until today when we actually go for the public opening, many things have changed and they've needed to react to a material and a circumstance outside of their control. And so with the grace and style of all of the artists and architects who have been able to weather this climate and material and very turbulent process, I'm going to pass the mic on to the moderator so we can eventually hear from all the participants. So thank you to the participants, the journalists, and definitely the students here who have worked on our different projects because they've been extraordinary. Thanks.
Thank you, Lance. On behalf of everybody who's somehow involved with the Snow Show project, I already dare to say that you've done a very fantastic job as a curator. We all appreciate that. And now next, I'll give the stage for Professor Timo Jokela. He works as a professor of art education at the University of Lapland, and will give a short 4 or 5 minute long presentation of the Snow Show art educational project. We should remember that the Snow Show project is not just the works we can see here at Rovaniemi and Kemi. It's a long process, and its educational aspect is we consider to be very important part of the substance of the whole thing. So, Timo, please.
Okay, thank you. So I'm working as a professor on university and leading this so we call it the Snow Show Art Education Project, which is a training project run jointly by University of Lapland, Polytechnic of Rovaniemi and Polytechnic of Kemi and Tornio. So the need to provide education related to winter art, snow sculpting, snow construction, it has been known quite a long time here in Lapland. And when Curator Fung introduced his great idea about the Snow Show, it speeded up the development such kind of educational project. And it is thanks to Fung and the publicity of the Snow Show that this education project in university got its 2 years funding from European Social Fund. So what is interesting, the project at first it's a very typical regional development project demanding cooperation of different fields. But what is new from it's that art education leads this project, and the motivate behind is belief in arts possibilities as regional, local development factor. So the cooperation with the Snow Show provides winter art education project a challenging opportunity to act both in local but also in international environment. At the same time, it offers an excellent chance to observe and learn from the creative ideas of artists and architecture, but of course also the difficulties that will occur when this kind of big scale of event is happening. So the aims of the education project was at first to gather and develop knowledge about snow and ice construction and winter art. The project at the beginning also challenged research of winter phenomena of different disciplines of the university to observe the culture of the winter and the culture of snow and ice. We saw a winter as let me say, this kind of intertextual story which has been built through research, different disciplines, artwork, and community activities of people. Now, we have completed 2 publications of this project. The first publication, Art of Winter, includes different kind of articles that discuss how winter has been described in areas such as visual art, literature, photography, movies, illustration, but also history about winter art, sculpture events, winter theaters, and so on and so on. And the second publication we have produced during this project, the Winter Skills. It's some kind of a guidebook for snow and ice sculpting. A very practical guide for artists, art teacher, and all those people who want to work with these winter elements. But also information how to take care of the works, illumination, even documentation and even evaluation of these kind of projects. So unfortunately these publications are not to sale, but we have widely distributed these books among our cooperation networks, schools and libraries in Finland. The second aim is to educate professionals of that field. And Snow provides an excellent framework for that, making the works of international architecture students and artists has given new information about snow and ice constructions. Working with students from at least 13 nations, countries, at work designed by Penil and Haldor was both at the same time very challenging, but it was also very, very fun. It was a good learning environment for our students. But for the future point of view, it's also very important that the winter art is taken to the local people, taken to schools of Lapland, where we have many kind of different cooperation projects going on. Those constructions, sculpting, ice carving tools production, and so on and so on. These workshops are arranged for teachers and students. And I believe that it's helped also the local people to understand the content of the snow show and the art which is now shown to us. Besides, the snow show has provided a great framework for media production education. An example of this production is Snow Media Channel, which publishes latest material of the event at the time. So later on, after this project will also produce web-based learning material dealing with winter art. Part of the material will be open use in internet, for example, schools and tourism industry. Other part is for university and polytechnic studies only. So we will offer our international partners possibilities to get to know the winter art and other culture too. So this will be some contribution to student exchange and cooperation programs with different art academies and universities. So this project has been, the work has they have been working in a very large scale, aiming for the possibility of using and developing this gathered material later. And I believe also that besides knowledge of contemporary art and architecture, this also even increase valuing of identity of the local people too, which is a important part when promotes physical and mental well-being also. So for the University of Lapland, this also has been very great situation. It has been honored to work with this art event and this artist, and we are very grateful for that situation.
Thank you, Timo. Lars would like to comment and give an remark.
I kind of feel like a talk show host down here. It's like, and now. The educational projects have been a big part of the Snow Show from the very beginning, especially reaching the local community and the elementary school kids. And so definitely the projects here that Timo has worked on has been instrumental in reaching culture, art, architecture, design, collaboration, and an international mess about the project on a primary level. So it's been very important to the project and will continue to be so. It's partially why UNESCO decided to also join with us and help sponsor the exhibition for the Venice Biennale. The reason why I took the mic is we're having one addition to the panel, and it's Rocio Paz, who's up front speaking to Zaha Hadid right now. She's been the project manager, and naturally after the incredible fire performance by Sai Gao Chang, she needed to be out there this morning to see how much of the structure had altered due to the fire. Yeah, you laugh, and we know. It was quite extraordinary. In any event, so if you see someone joining the stage a bit later, it's because Rocio is giving her, having a discussion with Zaha right now. Okay? And I'll let you continue. Thank you.
Good, thanks. And now we proceed as by the agenda as said before. So I would kindly ask all the artists and architects, your guests, to give a short, let me say about 5-minute summary, summa summarum, of how you feel right now, and the two particular issues I would wish you to outline or give your comments on those two particular issues. First of all, how did you find the collaboration between architects and artists? This is a very, very, very important, can I say, kind of structural say framework, substance thing behind the whole thing, the collaboration between arts and architecture. And secondly, how did you find snow and ice as a material? It's a very challenging material, as we all know. It'd be nice to hear your personal subjective views and comments on this. And if I could ask Salla to start, and then we go through the whole day.
Thank you.
So my name is Saya Holmen. I represent here the group Henrietta Sandman and Robert Barry, and our work is those 5 lanterns of Ursa Minor. First of all, I would like to thank Lance Fung for the great opportunity to work on this project. We're very sorry that Robert Barry couldn't make it here. It would have been very nice. First of all, I haven't ever met him, which is kind of strange, but the collaboration nevertheless has been quite fruitful. We have been working, communicating through via faxes, a very low-tech process, which has been quite sympathetic. Every time I tried to send a fax to him, he would answer the phone and say hello, hello, and I pushed the button, and off it goes, the drawing. But there have been questions about, we're quite young, and he's older than we are. He's very established, he's very famous, but none of this caused any problems. It has been amazingly smooth. I think mostly the well, the way he usually works, he works with words, conceptual ideas, and we have a very clear sort of division here, and our collaboration has been quite, how to say, overlapping in a way. Our task was to design the architectural concept, and we of course agreed together, but then he sort of added his opinion on top of that, and we agreed on that. So it has been quite pleasant and unproblematic, to say. Well, as it comes to the material, we, as Finns, are of course very closely related to the local culture by birth, and ice and snow are very, very elementary, very childhood-based material, and we were very enthusiastic when we had this chance, and we wanted to bring very close the process of freezing and the water turning into ice, and I hope that our piece gives an idea what we had in mind. And also we wanted to underline the acoustics, the way of light as it changes through the day, and when it sort of discusses with ice. But I think our piece talks about that more than I can say. Thank you.
I'm John Roloff, and I worked with architect office. I'm the artist that worked with the architect office of Diller and Scofidio, and it's Liz Diller and Rick Scofidio, so I'm going to say Rick and Liz, you'll know who I mean. Also Matthew Johnson was the project manager, and Gaspar Lubininsky was one of the other architects who worked with us a lot on the project. As far as the collaboration, I knew about their work a fair amount before I ever started, and they knew less about mine. But they're also a team that is a little more like an artist. They've done lots of different kinds of projects, and actually they haven't built very many. They're actually now sort of going to the phase of their career where they're starting to build buildings. And I think the collaboration was actually good because we both take a conceptual approach. They were interested in really what the nature of the materials were, not so much what kind of form should we build. We're trying to ask fundamental questions about what snow and ice is. We looked at it from initially as a kind of chemical and a physical sort of model, and also from a process model. And our project went through many, many changes partly because we couldn't figure out what we really wanted to say. And we were actually late with our submittals, which caused other kinds of problems. So it was quite a process. We had 2 face-to-face meetings with the full team, and then Matthew Johnson came out to San Francisco, where I live, and we had some meetings there. And then there was about 200 emails and phone calls and drawings and stuff sent back and forth. So it was actually, in some sense, a kind of exhaustive process. And as far as the snow and ice, like I was mentioning, we really, like I say, we're looking at it conceptually. Like, what is it? What are the properties of it? We ended up in our discussions coming around to this idea of purity. And because Liz and Rick are sort of, their approach comes from this idea of culture, issues about culture, and my work comes more from this relationship to nature. So we started thinking about this idea of purity in relationship to those 2 perspectives and where they would overlap. And we had numerous ideas initially having to do with snow-making machines and producing snow. And then it became a question, well, what is the snow? Is it just regular water? Is it water from a certain place? Is it, so, etc. So it became a conversation, again, going back to the materials. And the design here is one of the, came around fairly late because we were, again, late in the process and we had to figure out something that could be done fairly simply. But this kind of commingling of, or the idea of culture and nature coming together in these designer waters, or these waters that are now bottled. They take them from a natural source and they're bottled for our consumption, and then ultimately through different processes end back up in nature again. So this idea of the water cycle became an interesting overlap for our different positions, and that's how we ended up with this project.
I'd like to thank the organizers, Lance, and people who organized this symposium for having us here. I represent Anamorphosis architects, Kostas Kakolianis, Tota Malaki, Vaios Zidonelis, the other three members of the team, and in collaboration with the artist Eva Rothschild. She's half Irish, half English, British artist working in London. Well, those two interesting questions, the relationship between art and architecture, you introduced that, and the ice as a material, practically are one. Just, in our case, the understanding, the deep understanding of the material itself brought us together, brought architecture and art together. And I will explain in a few words what I mean by this. We didn't want to create an object, a frozen object. We wanted to animate the frozen itself. Both parts share the same principles. We don't believe in, we actually were critical of a formalist and expressionist paradigm in art and architecture today. And both parts look for the inner morphic principle of the material and construction itself. So this discovery of the morphic process and the highlighting of this morphic process of the material of ice and snow brought us together. This is what I call a reality principle. The principle of the real, to introduce some theoretical concepts here, which is, as I said, what's in the real as something which lies in front of our eyes, not in our minds. Discover what is there beyond our preconceptions and beyond our expressionistic and formalist cliches and styles and you name it. We discover that in this material there is a hidden principle of collectiveness. When you are in snow, you play with snow, you are static, you don't run, you play with it, you have a good time, you enjoy throwing the snowballs to each other. And in architectural terms, this has a form, which is a round circle, a gathering, a space of performance. Eva worked on the principle of the structural ingredient. She introduced the idea of the crystal as something which is irreducible. It's not a form, it's rather a genotypical kind of condition, which she worked on that, and she proposed this as on her own part. And in our structure, those two merged together, as I said, in a quiet, calm kind of critique, if you like, of the formalist and expressionist paradigm. The ancient theater, in inverted commas, is not just a metaphor we use here. It's just a space where people sit and talk to each other. And it is the ancient Greek theater, it's not the Roman theater, which is an animation of the landscape. The ancient theater is something which develops off the ground, off the hill, as opposed to the Roman theater, which is a box, a building imposed on a certain space. So we developed this idea of performance, and we introduced the form of the theater in a playful way in three stages. So there's an internal space of terraces, which is developing an external series of terraces, an external space, looking at the sea, far away. And the third sort of level is the transformation of terraces into screens, which are lit and make the project visible from very far away from the urban environment. So this is what I have to say. I emphasize the fact that both artists and the architects agreed on the spot, almost. I mean, our project finished in, we collaborated mostly in London by working together in the studio. And 99% of the project finished in 15 days. So the collaboration was perfect. And I'm quite happy that we managed to do that.
Hi, I'm Kiki Smith, and I collaborated with Levius Woods and also Linnea Tillett, who was our lighting designer, who installed the piece, the lighting and the whole piece actually, with the assistance of the volunteers here, so I thank them. What did we do? Levius and I had wanted to work together in the past and hadn't had the opportunity, and then Lance came to Levius and asked him if he would participate, and he suggested that he take me along as an artist. And so I was very excited to have the possibility to make a realization with him. I thought some of the things that were great about having this possibility is that it really was like kind of free-for-all, in a sense of like, you weren't trying to make something permanent, so you didn't have all the problems I think that artists and architects often have with bureaucracies or permission. You know, and as an artist, I'm not used to dealing with permissions like in my private studio practice, but I know when you go into the world, you often have these considerations. And also, it didn't, in a certain sense, have to succeed either. Like, you could just use it as a kind of experimentation situation. And in a way, both of us, you know, so I don't know if we really particularly were experimental, but we just both had a vision. Lance asked us if we wanted to make something, and we both said, this is what we want to make. We want to make a flat surface. And I thought, I work with glass a lot, and I thought the things I like working with materials is to them to go just to their nature. You know, like it just wants to fall down and puddle and make a, you know, just make something flat. And I live in New York, so we have a lot of snow and ice. We're not using it in the same way, we're living with it in the same way. But we're experiencing it. And so we just both immediately, just intuitively said, this is what we want to make. We want to make this flat surface. And then I thought I wanted to make, I don't know, I was making a lot of pieces about sleepwalkers. And then I thought, oh, I like to make images of women that are in the sky, and like who's in the sky, and you have witches in the sky, and ghosts in the sky, and fairies in the sky, and I just tried to compile a list of super women, and a whole lot of different characters, and then just by expedience, I picked some and drew them out, and then worked with a computer to vectorize them, that none of the lines cross, that they don't fall down. And then they were cut here in stainless steel, about 1/4 of an inch, so that they would lay under the surface and be like a shadow. But then with Lebius's light designing, that some parts would be illuminated. I mean, of course, the thing that, from not being here, not ever experienced working like this, it never occurred to me, like, this is a nighttime situation primarily only. Then in the daytime you see sort of slight, like ghosts in a way, which is maybe nice too. And maybe for me it was nice, the idea that the whole thing could just be swept away, or if it snowed, it would all just disappear, kind of, over, back into the landscape, that there'd be no remnants of something, or maybe in springtime some things start popping up or something. But, I think Linnea said one thing that was very nice was that the technology for the lighting didn't exist 5 years ago, and so you actually couldn't have made this 5 years ago, and that it's really just recently that you can make this light that goes out sideways or something underground like this. And she had worked with Maya Lin making a large ice skating rink in the Midwest, which is all constellations, and I realized that the only other time I worked with the architects was Fru Himmelblau from Vienna, and I'd also made like a celestial heaven. So I don't know, for both of us, it was very easy to work. We just said, do what you want, and I said for him to do what he wants. I admire Lebius's work very much, and so it was a great opportunity to just have a temporary situation. I would love to go make big skating rinks now someplace, but we'll see what happens in life. But in a way it was like soft, not like kind of soft ambition or something, but I was very happy. But I also thought, like, in this situation, it's just as okay to be miserable, to, like, when I came I thought maybe it's not done, maybe it doesn't work, and I thought it's okay also. So, thank you.
I worked with Rachel Whiteread, the British sculptor. When Lance called me, or maybe we had a lunch, when he said that, or asked me, would I like to work with Rachel Whiteread, I was very felt honored and pleased, because I have known her work and admired her work for years. As many of you might know, she works with architectural themes, or has worked for quite a long time. In the recent years with staircase or stairway imagery. And as it happened, I have myself been almost obsessed with stairways. Not only are they the favorite detailing item in any of the buildings, I do a kind of an architectural microcosm, but I have also been interested in staircases because of the metaphoric meanings and essences, and written psychoanalytical and phenomenological studies of what staircases mean. So and then as an architect, I'm used to approaching a project from given conditions. That's how architects work, whereas I think artists work from a different direction, more from the personality and internal imagery. So I felt immediately that the artist should make the first move, because as an architect I'm used to developing my thoughts around what is there, what's given to me, whereas an artist could feel imprisoned if the architect made the first move. So Rachel suggested a staircase theme, and I fully agreed. In our case, it is perhaps interesting that we never exchanged even one word, what was the meaning of the work, or what might be the experience of the work. Never. We worked on it as a matter of fact, realizing an image that we wanted to, or Rachel wanted to materialize. So no talk about poetics or expressions or anything of that sort, which I also felt very good about. In terms of materials, of course, as Saija said, as Finns, we do know snow and ice from early childhood. And in this kind of a task, one has, I guess, two principal starting points, either to work on the material, trying to express or reveal what the material is about, or then use it as a material to execute an image. In our case, the latter case applies. The image is a staircase in East London, which has been turned aside, which is the first removal or first distancing from reality, and then the second distancing or removal is the material itself. So we have never talked about these things, so I'm saying how I feel. So the work is very much about this distancing, but still twice, but then still attempting to maintain that association of the image. And I believe the success or failure of the work will very much depend on whether that connection can still be made, and the feeling of vertigo can arises from that recognition.
Thank you, Johnny. Before we proceed, I would have a very short comment here. What is very interesting and I think very remarkable in such a project as Snow Show and the particular works we can see in Ronnie and Kemi is of course the way how they combine, I dare to say, science, technology and art together. And in a certain way this reminds of us of, for example, Bauhaus principles. And this is an interesting thing to compare what's the basic, let me say, philosophy or approach of the Faculty of Arts and Design here in Rovaniemi at the University of Lapland. And as we all know, yesterday something tragical happened. The big whale crashed, the big whale by Anish-Kapoor Future Systems. And this is one thing I would like to ask, or maybe we all would like to have a comment from Seppo. So I would kindly give the mic to Seppo Mäkinen, who's the main engineer and the snow specialist of the Snow Show project, please.
Sorry, I had a small flu. In 14 I was outside too, but I hope you understand this. I feel that the most interesting thing was the starting point. When they started to make this Snow Show real. There is a world-class artists and architects designing something completely new, and we local workers, world-class snow and ice builders, with help of the students that try to make these beautiful and genius designs real. That thing I felt the most interesting. When we started this dialogue between designers and architects during the last year, I realized that things will go even more interesting. There were so crazy ideas, so talented ideas, and many things which we had to solve before building. I laid in my bed and didn't sleep hundreds of nights, I feel, and thinking about these problems which we have. How to make low-tech colored walls work. What kind of problems will be there? How to make angel lake of Kikismi, what kind of problems this will have. And this has been very interesting time, but hard. Through this process, I feel that we have through snow and ice building technology about 100 years forward what was before this snow show. And still we have to remember that snow and ice are only water. So in fact we are building structures and art pieces from water. It's a temporary material. Snow and ice are liquids. They are flowing. So we will see in the next 6 weeks what happens there. These structures are flowing a little bit down, changing their shape and what does it look like. And that will be even more interesting what we have seen so far. And then Sami asked me about these problems. Of course we have to take a look what kind of problems we have. If we do anything that new things like here we have done, we will have problems. And about this future systems Aniska board case was that we made a very beautiful free shape which never had been done before by using completely new technique. And it worked. The structure was great, it was beautiful. One of my favorites, personally. And then artists didn't want to create a room where people go in. So there was not any windows or doors, and there were small holes and lights inside, so that the lights will create an amazing, beautiful thing. And I underestimated this power of these lights, and these lights heated this room so that inside of this structure was about +50 when it flowed down. And that's for sure that when we build something from snow and ice, which are only water, that it can't last that kind of stress. So, that's what I wanted to say.
Giuseppe and I and Bob work together, and we're all sitting here. I think we're the only full team, maybe, at this table. And we didn't know each other. We met through this project. I think that one thing that was very successful about our collaboration is that Giuseppe and I are already used to putting ideas on the table because we're two, and the creative process is a dialogue. So Top sort of came in, and we never developed anything without being the three of us together. We always talked about the snow show as we were together around the table at the studio, with more or less fiery sittings and meetings and discussions. In terms of the material, there is also something that I think united us, which is we were all very, very ignorant about the materials. We didn't know anything about snow or anything about ice. Giuseppe and I come from the south of Italy, where it never snows, and Top comes from Thailand, tropical. So basically, totally clueless. And maybe that's the reason why we went back to water, which is something that instead is extremely familiar. And we started thinking that we were more interested in working out of water instead of working out of snow and ice. And somehow this also came from another thing that I think unites Top, Giuseppe and I, which is we're much more interested in experimenting and also in having a more hands-on kind of creative process. And we were very, very intrigued in trying to understand what one could do with this material and how we could push it. And somehow very not inspired by the idea of working with the construction methods that were already available, such as the blocks of ice or the packing the snow, which is already done here and seems to be a very well-established practice.
So the idea of working with water came around, and we fought quite a bit to understand how we could bring in the two different desires on our end, I guess, on Lotec's end, the idea of creating a space that was, you know, a three-dimensional space that was, from a process point of view, something not conventional. And as I don't know as how many of you know, but we work very much with existing objects generally. So for us, it was quite a challenge to work with a material that is completely formless. And I think because of that, we try to put ourselves in a position of constriction and confinement, and thinking about how we could sort of like set up an exercise, an experiment, and then let the experiment develop itself. Instead of try to, you know, do something that was more of a formal exploration or more of a, you know, beautifully detailed and finished work. I actually thought what Kiki said before is very much as what we felt. You know, it was more about the experiment, definitely much more about that than about the end result. We had a lot of fun doing it. We had a lot of fun meeting Top and fighting with him, and I think that the piece is what it is. It's you know, somehow interesting because it talks about the process, and that's what we wanted the piece to talk about. And somehow, you know, rough and not as finished and not as successful, but that's okay. You know, ultimately, it was water. It will be water again in a few months or weeks. We don't know, depending on the temperature. And one thing I think I would like for Top to add something. He had a very, very nice way of describing our relationship that I think talks also quite a bit about the relationship between art and architecture, and maybe it's would be a nice thing to hear.
I'm sure some of you have heard this story before, but working with Lotec was like shopping at a supermarket together. In the beginning, Lotec said, okay, Top, you are in charge of vegetables, and you're going to be in charge of poultry and chicken. And 15 minutes after this, we're going to meet at the checkout line. And I did. You know, I walked to supermarket, got what I wanted, vegetables, and Lotec looked at my cart, and they saw cucumbers. And they asked me, how come there's only cucumbers here? And I said, well, cucumbers are the only thing that I like to eat. And right there and then, I think we had a problem. There's no way to cook cucumbers, and so our solution was to walk down every aisle together in the supermarket, which I hated, because when I go to the supermarket, I only go there 5 minutes. I pick up, you know, cucumbers, cereals, and milk and yogurt and bananas, and I'm out. But it was very tiring, and you know, you think vanilla ice cream is easy, right? But no, it's different types and different kinds. So every item, so do we like it? We like it, we put it in, and we do not like it, we put it in the cart. It's like taking in and taking out and all kind of stuff. But you know, I can tell, I know their personality. I can tell you a little bit about them. You know, I mean, Giuseppe, he's a visionary. You know, I mean, his insights, and you know, he's like 3 or 4 steps ahead. And Ada, I think, if you need to go from A to B, she takes you there with a shortcut. And for me, I mean, I can't. If you need to go to A to B, no. I go to A to E and F, and sometimes G. If I stop at B, okay, that's good enough. Maybe next time, because I go by my instinct. So I think the 3 of us works very well together.
True dysfunctional family. My name is Carsten Höller. I've been working with Williams and Zin, and we made a structure which has a few slides. I met him in Venice. We both happened to be there at the same time. We had exactly 30 minutes. 15 of them we spent looking for a place where we could sit down and speak. And I told him that I would be interested in doing something which has to do with slides, because I've been working with slides before. I also thought that snow is a very slippery medium, if you want to call it like this. It would be interesting to do slides in snow. And I've been constructing slides before in existing buildings, so stainless steel slides mostly, but also one slide in plastic, which I propose as a, if you want, a means of transport within the buildings, but you can go from one place to another in a very fast, elegant, very low energy consuming way, and also it produces a certain moment of disorientation, of fun. It's a very complex thing to go down a slide, I believe, because you are in a directed environment. It's something that brings you down, you know exactly how it will go, and still you have to let go everything, you have no control whatsoever, and it's like this moment of, you know, getting out of this usual control that you have of your environment, which produces a certain beauty, so that when you come down the slide, it is often producing a weird moment of happiness. And I don't understand why not all the buildings in the world have slides everywhere when they're a bit taller. I also don't understand why tall buildings are not connected by slides in between. I see this as a very, a thing that should be there in the future. Buildings are always built with staircases and elevators, but the slides are just not there, except maybe for some kind of fire escape. Or if you want to put your garbage, you have something which is similar to a slide and falls down in the garbage container. But it's such an elegant way of transportation in the building that I'm seriously proposing it as something to be included and things to be built in the future. And not asking me always in retrospect to do a slide in an already existing structure. But then it also comes to the point of collaboration, which I find very difficult. Because I've been working with other artists and collaborating and doing works together. And it's such an intimate process, something, you know, you have to somehow show your very inner sides and, you know, get to a point where you really work together. So I thought I really cannot do that with some architects that I met for 30 minutes in Venice, whom I liked, and I thought it would be great to do something together. But at the same time, I could not really cooperate with them in the sense that we do something which is one work, but I see it more as two kinds of layers that come on top of each other that make perfect sense. So I said, I have these slides, I would like to have something which is like a surface of slides, many slides, slides that are also meeting, like a meandering situation. And if you would be interested in creating a structure for it, which is making sense in this context, then this would be a very good way to find a solution for the show. And so at the beginning I thought I would build something because I was very naive, and I think all these architects have to build high, but then they spoke about this idea of the sunken courtyard, which I like very much. And then we started to build these slides, and it has the work as it is now. It has a few features I like, because when you see it first, you don't see it really, because it looks like a block basically. So you have to go on it to see all these different slides. I think it has a very, very clear concept in the sense that it has a center and you get down there by using the slides. But some of these slides are not steep or not steep enough. So they also work as ramps that you can walk, and they have like a hybrid function depending on what kind of clothes you're wearing. If you're all in nylon, you can maybe use them. If you know other clothes like cotton on, you might only use the slides that are very steep. And I see it really as a proposition, like a model in itself, not so much as an existing work, but like a model for something that could be. Maybe another structure in snow and ice, which could also be much bigger and contain many more slides, and providing the opportunity for people to meet while sliding down, so that you slide down a really long time. And then the slides are all meeting, and you sit there and you go down and down and down. And then you meet somewhere at some point, which can be quite a magic moment. So this is like a model of something what could be. It's already quite beautiful, but now I see it like 10 or 100 times bigger. And also being in this landscape, which has this incredible, like openness, if you like, and this range of possibilities. I would just like to make it one more time in the real way. Fantastic, incredible space where we slide and slide and slide and almost never stop.